Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. The Wisconsin Badgers clock in at number 24 in our way too early top 25 poll. The Badgers started 2021 at 1-3, but won 8 of their last 9 games to finish the year at 9-4. So the Badgers carry a lot of momentum into 2022, but face a lot of roster turnover and a very difficult schedule, which will of course make it very difficult for them to find their way in to the Big Ten championship game. So guys, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert again. We're about to break down Wisconsin's schedule. What's so difficult about it, and is there a path possibly to that Big Ten title game? Before we do that, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Of course, check out everything down in the description below because, guys, all those things that take you just a few seconds and will greatly benefit you greatly benefit us too. So just clicking that like button, leaving a comment, hitting that subscribe button, getting our notifications so you don't miss any more schedule previews or any of our predictions later on in the year, they help us out tremendously. So make sure to get on that, help us out, become a part of our Gridiron Expert team so we can continue to bring you this content 24/7, 365. So we'll take a look at Wisconsin. Like we just mentioned, 1-3 start last year, finished 9-4. We started with the roster turnover. The Badgers returned 6 starters on the offensive side of the ball. One of them is going to be their quarterback in Grahama Mertz. And for many Badgers fans, that's not a good thing. Grahama Mertz has been very, very lackluster in his Wisconsin career and never really has taken the next step like we thought he would. Once again, leaving Wisconsin without the one thing that I think is keeping them from making the college football playoff, and that is a quarterback. If anybody thought it would be Grahama Mertz, a 5-star recruit, and he has failed to live up to those lofty expectations. Mertz will be without his top 3 pass catchers from last year. That's obviously a concern, but the offensive line is typically usually pretty solid, and obviously Wisconsin wanting to try to play some bully ball up front might be what Paul Chryst chooses to do again in 2022. The defense, guys, was fantastic in 2021. The number 1 defense in all the land, allowing just 239.1 total yards per game. But the Badgers lose 4 in their secondary, and they lose their top 2 tacklers in Leo Chenal and Jack Sanborn. So a lot of roster turnover, especially defensively. I would not expect Wisconsin to replicate those historic defensive numbers they had last year, but the battle in the trenches, the offensive line and the defensive line should once again remain a strength for Wisconsin. May or may not result in another Big Ten championship berth. They just missed out last year, Iowa winning the Big Ten West instead. We take a look at their schedule going into this year. Guys, it's favorable early on, and they have a little bit of a favorable stretch in the middle. But for the most part, this is a very brutal schedule for the Badgers, who I think right now, despite, yes, being a top 25 team, still have quite a bit of questions. I really like the Washington State matchup in Week 2. If you watched our video on Jake Dickert, the new head coach of Washington State, you know the Cougars could be in store for a very special season. Maybe one where they can contend, maybe even win the Pac-12 North. That's how good I believe the Cougars can be. Wisconsin benefiting from hosting the Cougars in Madison, coming to Camp Randall Stadium. So that's a good, to me, early test to see what both of these teams are made of. How competitive is that game, and who emerges victorious in that game? If Washington State does, could spell for a rough year for Wisconsin. But if Wisconsin does, to me, that's a quality win over a Power 5 opponent that's not elite yet, but could get there soon. What I'm looking at is this 4-game stretch from September 24th to October 15th. You could even stretch it to October 22nd if you want. First off, look at the road games just as a whole on Wisconsin's schedule. At Ohio State, at Northwestern. Northwestern seems to have one good year, one bad year, and last year was a bad year, so if Pat Fitzgerald knows anything, maybe they'll be in for a pretty good year in 2022. But at Ohio State, at Northwestern, at Michigan State, who was phenomenal last year, at Iowa, at Nebraska. I mean, these road games are just horrendous for Wisconsin. And all these teams are getting better and better by the day. I should say the same for Wisconsin, but Nebraska adding some key transfers, bringing in Mark Whipple now as the new offensive coordinator. Iowa won the West last year, always a great defense. Michigan State was phenomenal last year, ended up winning the Peach Bowl over Pittsburgh, and then Ohio State is Ohio State. That 4-game stretch to me is the key, and what's really going to separate Wisconsin from having a fantastic year or maybe another mediocre year, 8 or 9 win season. The Badgers, of course, want to win more than that. 10 or 11 wins is the expectation. Playing for Big Ten championships is the expectation. The road game against Ohio State kicks off that key stretch. That is brutal. That is tough. Could be a preview of the Big Ten championship game, but going to Columbus, potentially at night at the end of September. That's going to be very, very difficult for Wisconsin. And how they fare in that game, even if they don't win, if they can hang in that game and be competitive, that could set the tone really for the rest of the year. They get Illinois at home right after that. The Fighting Illini had been prone to giving Wisconsin some issues in the past. Wisconsin getting to host them, though, at home. Illinois showing signs of life last year in their first year under Brett Bielema. Not sure they'd have enough to come on the road and get the win again. We're not predicting anything, but that's a nice little break before they get back-to-back road games at Northwestern, who Wisconsin beat 35-7 last year, and then Michigan State, who, again, they draw out of the East, just like they draw Ohio State. Michigan State in East Lansing going to be very, very difficult. Peyton Thorne returning at quarterback. Should be a relatively solid defense under Mel Tucker. This is a Spartan squad that expects to win double-digit games again now in 2022. So a brutal stretch there. And then Purdue, to cap it all off, Wisconsin did beat the Boilermakers 30-13 last year. And yes, they get to host the Boilermakers this year, which is beneficial. But that offense, always very difficult to stop. And that's going to really, I think, test this Wisconsin defense, especially in that secondary if they haven't replenished the starters that they lost. So just a brutal stretch of Ohio State, Illinois, Northwestern, Michigan State, and tack on Purdue if you want to. But to me, it's those main four, specifically the bookends, Ohio State and Michigan State, that are really going to set the tone for Wisconsin, because 2 losses there to Ohio State and Michigan State might eliminate them from Big Ten title contention. Certainly would from the playoff discussion, but might do so depending on how teams like Iowa, maybe even Nebraska fare in the West, even to Purdue in the West even. And keep in mind that Wisconsin still has to go to Iowa and Nebraska in back-to-back weeks, even though the Badgers won both of those games 27-7 over Iowa and 35-28 over Nebraska. So, guys, there's a lot of questions going into the season for Wisconsin. Very brutal schedule. Yes, they had a success last year on the back end after a very poor start. First month, really, of September was pitiful. Wisconsin turned it on in the final 2 months. I think they're going to see a very strong start again. I think they're going to see a strong start this year. 3 wins, possibly, to start the year, 3-0. How they finish those final 2 months, starting with Ohio State, and let's not sleep on Minnesota either at the very end. Wisconsin losing to the Golden Gophers 23-13 last year, a game that ultimately kept them out of the Big Ten championship game, or came pretty dang near close. That Iowa-Wisconsin battle was very, very close, razor thin. So, guys, again, this is not, to me, shaping up to be a very special season for the Badgers. I'm relatively concerned with the schedule, especially considering how Wisconsin has not had the offense to keep up with the likes of Ohio State, Michigan State, maybe even Nebraska when it's all said and done. But the defense is enough to keep them in these games. We mentioned some of these scores. They beat Illinois 24-0 last year, Northwestern 35-7, Purdue 30-13, Iowa by 20, Nebraska beat them by 7 but scored 35 points. So the potential is there, but with a schedule like this, it's going to be very difficult to navigate, and it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of work Paul Chryst can do, what kind of miracles can he work up in Madison to try to make this a very successful season and hopefully a little bit of a better one than they had in 2021. So, guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. That wraps up Wisconsin's schedule preview. We're 2 teams into this top 25. We have a long, long ways to go, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But as always, guys, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Become a part of our Gridiron Expert team by taking just a few seconds to do all of that, because it helps our channel more than you know, and we appreciate it greatly. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.